up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you've had a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, otherwise we'll punch you in the throat, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is the story and situation around Post Malone, which I feel like is bigger than the story around one man. I think it's something that touches on anyone in the spotlight and the relationship and the sense of ownership that people have, whether it be the fans or the internet in general. So over the past week, you've had a large number of people sharing clips saying they're incredibly concerned about the 24-year-old's behavior. This including videos of him stumbling on stage, intensely rolling his eyes as he sings. Right, you have a lot of fans that are protective, concerned, people who are still reeling from the drug-related deaths of people like Mac Miller and Lil Peep. Right, so you had a number of people with these viral videos saying that Post Malone's behavior signaled a potential substance abuse problem. Though, understand while these theories were going viral, they were blowing up, you still had a number of fans arguing that this is just how Post Malone performs. Others just feeling uneasy about all of the public speculation in general, even if the intentions were good. You know, the pushback to that was it's better to be safe than sorry. And as the noise around this situation got louder, we saw Post Malone's father, Rich Post, eventually taking to social media to shut down the rumors, retweeting a video of his son playing the guitar and singing, adding, "I'm getting tired of it, y'all." What does this video say? Coherently playing the guitar while simultaneously singing. Seems a lot harder than accidental slips and stage theatrics. And then continuing, I don't want to come across as dismissive to those of you who have expressed concerns about Austin. Your sincerity and kindness regarding him is certainly heartwarming and appreciated. We also ended up seeing Post Malone himself address this during a performance in Memphis, Tennessee.
I'm not on drugs and I feel the best I've ever fucking felt in my whole life. And that's why I can bust my ass for these shows and fucking fall on the floor and do all that fun shit, man. But for anybody that's concerned here, I appreciate the love and the support, but I feel fucking fantastic and I'm not doing it.
We did also acknowledge that there was a dark time in his life where he would turn to drugs, but once again, assuring fans that he was okay now.
You know, there was a time in my life, a very dark time in my life where, you know, I would try and you know, find alternate escapes from reality and do drugs, but now I just want everybody to know in this building that I'm fucking okay and I'm the happiest I've ever fucking been. So thank you so much.
Following that, it calmed down the worries of many fans, but also you had a number of people saying maybe he just hasn't accepted the problem yet. But once again, that's speculation, and it brings up that debate of, is this helpful or is actually something that's hurting? Now, I don't have the answer for that, but what I will say is looking at the concern that there is around artists and the conversation happening around it most of the time, it does somewhat bring a smile to my face, and it makes me feel like the conversation around mental health has greatly improved just over the past decade alone. And obviously, I think that's somewhat connected to the losses we've seen in recent years, but then notoriously people like Amy Winehouse, someone who, I mean, looking back, really didn't get that public empathy that a lot of artists get today. Someone who is very publicly spiraling, and instead of just an army of hands reaching out to help, she was kind of villainized, right? So as far as where the right middle ground is, as far as public help and public reaction, I don't know. But that's also kind of the beauty of the show. That's the story. I'm just one person, and I pass the question off to you. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. And then let's talk about the news and the conversation around misinformation and manipulated media. Right, so last month, Twitter rolled out its policy for addressing synthetic and manipulated media, which said that users could not, quote, deceptively share synthetic or manipulated media that are likely to cause harm. With Twitter also saying that it would label this kind of content, and that policy actually went into effect last week on March 5th. And ultimately, that brought us to yesterday, where Twitter seemed to apply the manipulated media label for the first time to a video that was posted by Trump's social media director, Dan Scavino, and retweeted by Trump himself. Now, the video in question was a 13-second clip of Joe Biden speaking at a campaign rally on Saturday that looked like this.
Turn this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. We can only re-elect Donald Trump.
Right, so you watch that and you potentially go, did Joe Biden just endorse Donald Trump? What just happened? Well, it turns out that clip was actually cut before Biden finished his sentence. And in the original video that we found, we see him say this.
We can only re-elect Donald Trump if, in fact, we get engaged in this circular firing squad here. It's got to be a positive campaign, so join us.
Right, so basically what it appears that he was saying was Trump can only be reelected if we keep infighting. So obviously a very different situation and message from the first video that was edited. Looking at the situation, right, Twitter's first official implementation of their new policy, it was met with a fair share of problems. Because while it has been hit with a manipulated media label, Twitter didn't determine the post violated its guidelines until about 18 hours after. And according to reports, by that point, it had already been viewed more than 5 million times and retweeted more than 20,000. Also, it appeared that there were technical problems problems as well. According to reports, it was a glitch with the manipulated media label itself, with a Twitter spokesperson saying that the manipulated tag wasn't showing up in the tweet details, and adding that users who clicked into the tweet itself may not be able to see the label, but that it was visible in the timeline, which I imagine is how most people see tweets. Now, one of the other reasons this was a big deal is not only because the content was labeled, but also because this possibly sets a precedent that it shows that Twitter is not scared to crack down on Trump and his team. And this wasn't just a tweet and a video from Joe Blow, this was coming from people with connections to the administration. Also, Twitter is not alone here. We saw Facebook respond to the video of Biden as well. Now, Facebook did not initially label or do anything to the post, but it did prompt Biden's campaign manager to blast the company in a statement last night saying, "Facebook's malfeasance when it comes to trafficking in blatantly false information is a national crisis in this respect. Facebook won't say it, but it is apparent to all who have examined their conduct and policies they care first and foremost about money, and to that end are willing to serve as one of the world's most effective mediums for the spread of vile lies." But then, this morning we ultimately saw Facebook add a label to the video marking it as partly false information, with a Facebook spokesperson saying, "Fact checkers rated this video as partly false, so we are reducing its distribution and showing warning labels with more context for people who see it, try to share it, or already have." And adding, "As we announced last year, the same applies if a politician shares the video, if it was otherwise fact-checked when shared by others on Facebook." But as far as what happens from here, right, with Facebook and Twitter, even if they implement this labeling system fast, right, not 18 plus hours, one, I think it's going to be incredibly hard, if not impossible, for these companies to implement this policy across the board. Honestly, this clip is probably one of the easiest examples and instances that they will face, right? It's the small, singular moment and clip where the posts on these websites are saying he said this, even though the clip is cut in a specific way to change the context. I mean, without being an enabler, there are a lot of different ways that this clip can and will be played in a way that does not violate the rules. And two, I do believe this is going to happen to Biden over and over and over, from today all the way to election day if he gets the nomination, like odds are looking like he's going to get. Right? Because you have Trump, the GOP, a number of Republicans, Dem supporters who oppose Biden, trying to label Joe Biden as an old man with dementia. Because the thing is, Joe Biden misspeaks and he will continue to misspeak, thus making him a bigger and easier target. Now, the way that Biden supporters have been able to combat that claim is pointing out that Joe Biden has had a lifelong problem with stuttering, which I will say I'm completely unfamiliar with the challenges that come with a stutter. And I started looking into it further because when someone says, you know, they have a stutter, I just think someone that says, I, blah, blah, blah. Right, looking for the answer of, well, how it explains sometimes the odd sentence structure or the word choice. And actually, I'll read a small snippet from this interesting Atlantic article about Joe Biden's stutter. I'll link to it down below. You know, the author writes there, "A stutter does not get worse as a person ages, but trying to keep it at bay can take immense physical and mental energy." Noting, now, Biden talks all day to audiences both small and large. Also noting, in addition to periodically stuttering or blocking on certain sounds, he appears to intentionally not stutter by switching to an alternative word, a technique called circumlocution, which can yield mangled syntax. I've been following practically everything he's said for months now, and sometimes what is quickly characterized as a memory lapse is indeed a stutter. And understand, this is not me saying that Biden does not make mistakes, right? All politicians to different degrees make mistakes when speaking. But we are likely going to see a higher rate of people saying that Joe Biden has dementia when there are moments where you see the headlines where it's like, Joe Biden appears to forget Obama's name.
Because they invaded another country and annexed a significant portion of it called Crimea. Right. He's saying that it was my boss, it was his fault.
But then you have experts looking at that clip going, oh no, he just blocked on the word Obama, and so he substituted my boss. Yeah, that's a story, some of my predictions. If there is a final note here, no matter where you stand, I think we could all benefit from just kind of like holding on a beat before we sharing something. And it's very easy to characterize this as someone lesser than you would do, but none of us are immune from this. But that said, around this, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and Today in Awesome, brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, a website, an online store, a whatever, make it with Squarespace. Squarespace empowers people like you to create their online web presence or launch their passion project. And everyone can find a new home on Squarespace, from entrepreneurs, small business owners, to photographers, new restaurants, bloggers, vloggers, musicians, actors, fashion designers, and so much more. They all trust and use Squarespace for their website needs. And it's easy to see why. There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade ever. Creating a beautiful website with Squarespace's all-in-one platform has never been so simple. It's extremely intuitive and easy to use. Also, with their award-winning marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the place to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Also, doesn't hurt that you can get personalized support from their award-winning customer care team via email or live chat. Whatever you need, they're available 24/7 to help out. And so if you want to make the smart move like many already have, just go ahead, start your free trial today at squarespace.com/Phil. And just make sure you enter an offer code Phil to get 10% off your first purchase. And the first bit of awesome is something something I am incredibly excited about. It's also a little bit of a tease. This Wednesday at noon West Coast, 3 p.m. Eastern over at youtube.com/aconvawith for the video version or linkshole.com for the audio version. I have a podcast and conversation going out with comedian Daniel Sloss. He's someone I've been a fan of for the past few years. He's kind of been one of the pie in the sky polls for the podcast. If you haven't seen his comedy specials on Netflix, Dark and Jigsaw, or his HBO one, X, I highly recommend it before Wednesday. Yeah, I'm very excited to release it. It was an awesome time and I know you'll enjoy it. Then How It Should Have Ended gave us volume 2 of their Star Wars compilation. We had Megan Thee Stallion creating the playlist of her life, Norman Reedus answering the web's most searched questions. We also had the final trailer for Black Widow, and SciShow gave us 5 of the most important inventions in robotics. If you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about the hugely serious issue that a lot of us are still joking about as a way to really kind of deflect how nervous we might be: coronavirus. Over the weekend, we saw a number of massive updates. As of this morning, worldwide, 110,000 have been infected, nearly 4,000 people have died, and in large, a lot of what we're going to be talking about are updates from the United States and Italy. Now, in the United States, as of recording this video, we've seen the number of cases jump to over 626 now dead. Notably, most of those deaths are coming from Washington State alone. In the US, we've seen a number of conferences in the news. For example, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, which has never had to canceled, and they are just one of several conferences that have either canceled or postponed. Although another conference in the news was CPAC, right? It's that yearly conservative convention. You had speakers this year like President Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. It came out that one of the attendees tested positive for coronavirus. And following that, we saw Republicans Ted Cruz, Paul Gosar, Doug Collins, and now Matt Gaetz saying that they would be self-quarantining. Though, of note, at this time, none of them have said that they have symptoms. Right, but that's also part of the issue with this, that symptoms do not appear until up to 14 days later. And here we saw a number of people mocking Gosar and Gaetz specifically. This largely because they had mocked the emergency coronavirus bill that was meant to throw money at this problem, with Gaetz specifically making headlines after wearing a gas mask on the House floor while the bill was being debated. And in the United States, we're seeing major health officials saying this is past the point of containing the virus. And so ultimately the goal now is to just try and protect as many people from catching the virus as possible. With U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams saying,
initially, we had a posture of containment so that we could give people time to prepare for where we are right now. Now we're shifting into a mitigation phase, which means that we're helping communities understand you're going to see more cases. Unfortunately, you're going to see more deaths, but that doesn't mean that we should panic.
Right, so continuing on the idea of be alert but do not panic, Adams then going on to say that communities need to decide whether or not to close schools, have employees work from home, cancel large gatherings. But also Adams saying that he believes that the virus is contained in certain parts of the country. Also, regarding that previously mentioned throwing money at the problem, on Friday we saw President Trump sign an $8.3 billion coronavirus aid package. Notably, this bill will fund prevention efforts, medical supplies, vaccine research. And after signing that bill, Trump visited the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention headquarters in Atlanta, where he said it will end, people have to remain calm. Also, on the question of whether or not Americans should start canceling their travel plans, Trump said,
I think it's fine if they want to do it. I don't think it's an overreaction, but I wouldn't be generally inclined to do it. I really wouldn't be.
Also, there's been a lot of confusion around who can actually get tested if they think they have the virus. This in part because on Friday, Trump said,
anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there.
Though on Thursday, you had Vice President Mike Pence saying that though the government would provide testing for people it believes have been exposed or are showing symptoms, it does not have enough tests today to meet what we anticipate will be the demand going forward. Though, on that note, the CDC is saying that it expects to have 4 million ready by the end of the week, so that is obviously better. And so after that, we saw Democratic New York Governor Andrew Cuomo criticizing the Trump administration on MSNBC, saying the administration was sending mixed messages, which was not a unique note. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Washington Governor Jay Inslee say, I just received a call from VP Mike Pence thanking Washington State for our efforts to combat the coronavirus. I told him our work would be more successful if the Trump administration stuck to the science and told the truth. Also last week, we saw California Governor Gavin Newsom calling the U.S.'s testing capacity, quote, simply inadequate. Though last night we saw Trump directly respond to Cuomo on Twitter, saying there are no mixed messages, only political weaponization by people like you. And this morning, Trump tweeting, the fake news media and their partner, the Democrat Party, is doing everything within its semi-considerable power. It used to be great. greater to inflame the coronavirus situation far beyond what the facts would warrant. Surgeon General, the risk is low to the average American. And while we in the United States kind of brace ourselves waiting for this to get into the thousands, I think it's important that we look to Italy, where the number of cases has spiked to more than 7,300. It's now tracking just under South Korea, which is the largest outbreak in the world outside of China. They're seeing similar numbers of around 7,400 cases, although there only 50 have died so far. But in Italy on Saturday, 233 people had already died, and yesterday that number actually jumped to 366, with most of the deaths reportedly happening in the northern region of Lombardy. And because the situation there was getting so bad, on Saturday an Italian newspaper leaked that a new decree would go into effect the next day. A decree that would extend Italy's quarantine measures by classifying 14 of Italy's northern provinces as red zones until April 3rd, meaning that no one would be able to get in or out of the region during that time, which is massive. Right? Because understand, we're not talking about thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. We're talking about something that would prevent 16 million people from leaving the region. That is a quarter of Italy's total population. And among other things, that decree also bans public events. It closes movie theaters, gyms, bars, even things like funerals and weddings are currently banned. And so with this, you had a lot of people complaining, saying that these measures were draconian. So with this being announced, it set off a firestorm. You had people trying to get out of town before the restrictions came into effect at midnight. We also saw news coming out of Italian prisons where things were even worse. We ended up seeing inmates protesting overcrowded conditions, many of them afraid that the coronavirus could easily spread among them. Reportedly, this was widespread. Protests broke out at more than 24 prisons. And even outside, we saw the families of the prisoners protesting in the streets. This because the prisons had stopped allowing visitors to see them. Also, according to reports, in these prisons, many of the protests turned into riots. I mean, hell, in this morning, we even saw inmates breaking out of a prison in Milan, climbing the roof. And in other prisons, we saw reports of prisoners escaping altogether. Others where 6 inmates died after they broke into the infirmary. And actually, wow, I mean, this really speaks to how fast everything develops. As I was filming this, we got the notification that Italy has now expanded travel restrictions to the entire country. Right, so now, not just 16 million people, but around 60 million. Now, with all of that said, this still being a developing situation, I kind of want to end on 2 notes. One, I know that there's been this run on hand sanitizers and face masks. Experts say that your best defense against this is, I hate even saying it because it makes you want to do it, not touching your face, your eyes, your nose, your mucous organs, making sure that you are hand washing with soap and water. As people smarter than me explain, soap molecules have a fatty end that attach to and penetrate the lipid shell of the virus, and a hydrophilic, water-loving end that water attaches to and rinses away the soap with the virus. Whereas hand sanitizer may render the virus impotent, but leaves it on your hands. And also, 2, we should talk about the lethality of this coronavirus, COVID-19. Right, the World Health Organization currently estimates that the fatality rate is 3.4%, but that varies greatly depending on age. Right, it's really not until you're talking about people in their 50s where all of a sudden you see the big spike in fatalities, with 70 to 79 hitting 8%, 80 plus 14.8%. And you might be younger and you might be thinking, well, if I get it, not a big deal. Well, there, I would say there are other factors. As has been reported, people who are immunocompromised and smokers may be more at risk, but also, even if you are not at high risk yourself, we still have a public health obligation to take interventions that will prevent spread that could overwhelm the healthcare system, right? Minimizing and slowing the spread as much as possible. Healthcare experts call this flattening the curve, and it would give the system in general more time to prep and be prepared for what was coming next. But ultimately, that's where we are right now. I want you to be informed on this, be concerned, be alert, but right now, still do not panic. With that said, obviously we'll be staying on top of this. This is still developing, and of course, in the meantime, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And that is where I'm going to end today's show. And hey, if you like this video, hit us with a like. If you're new here, hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss these weekday videos. Also, if you're looking for more right now, you can check out that latest podcast I did with Sophia and Tyler, or maybe just missed the last Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, you can click your tab right there to watch either of those. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you like it.